see, I don't have any brake lights working on my trailer. Let's fix that. So I'm gonna make a long story short. On this trailer, there is only one light on each side that functions as turn signal, brake lights, and tail lights, as you can see right there. The amber ones are actually strobe lights. So the last semi-truck that I had hauling this trailer was an older one. It was a 1979. Had the same type 7-pin plug, but it got the power from the brake lights through the turn signals. Now, most modern trailers, this is a 1960, so it only has one stop, tail, turn. Most modern trailers have 2 lights. And it just so happens that whenever I updated trucks, I didn't realize that my brake lights wouldn't work on the truck because they have a separate pin on the connector for brake lights. So I've got to add another light right here for brake light and tail light. And this will be blinker and tail light. So it's just stuff you got to do whenever you're swapping old equipment with newer trucks. And I like the trailer, it still goes good, so it makes sense to keep it on the road. And just for demonstration purposes, I've got the brake stick 4.0 holding the brake pedal and the left blinker on. And I'll show you what happens at the trailer plug. I've got a pin down here that is illuminated whenever the brake pedal is applied. So in the older truck, the blinkers and the brake lights came through the same circuit. Not on this truck, and that threw me for a curveball. I was trying to figure out why I didn't have any brakes, and basically it's because this truck is modern, trailer is old. I've got the left blinker on, as you can see, and I've also got the tail lights, or the headlights, whichever circuit you want to think of it as, on 2 pins. So that's the way this should be. This is a right blinker, obviously I don't have it engaged, and that's the brake. And that's the ABS. So with the older truck, I was getting brake lights through my turn signals, and I could get away with using 1 light. In the newer truck, I've got to have 2 lights. So let's get at it and convert this trailer over so we can use this truck and the DOT won't mess with us. Here we are in the tongue of the trailer, and guys, I got super lucky. This just happens to be a cable that has enough electrodes in it so that I don't have to run a new cable to the back of the trailer. So I should have power at the back of the trailer. Let's go check it out. And if you didn't have a cable going to the back of the trailer, a lot of times you'd have to run a new wire just for brake lights, and that sounds like a pain. So I'm lucky that I've got a cable coming all the way from the front to the pigtail to the back. All right, so here we are under the back of the trailer, and this is the big connector. I believe this is a 7-wire harness that goes all the way up to the front where that plug was. Now, I unwrapped the wire loom and I found that black wire right there is actually hooked up to the brake pedal, which I have up in the truck. I have the brake pedal stick wedged in there, so it's applying the brake pedal. So all I've got to do is tap into this brake light wire, go to each side for the brakes, and I should be all right. eBay brought me some goodies. Some matching LED. These are the high count LEDs, the Grotes. These are awesome lights. I'd highly recommend them. Very bright, easy to install. Brought me 2 of those. CarQuest, I bet that's an old one. Either way, if they haven't been used, they're still good. I got the grommets and a couple pigtails. Should be enough to add a set of brake lights. I'm gonna start by taking the light out. In this case, this is going to be the blinker light. I'm going to take this out because I need to get a size how big that hole needs to be. I cut these in there a long time ago because I actually installed these LED tail lights, but I don't have a template of how big that hole needs to be, so now I have to make one to duplicate it over here. I know I'm a pack rat, and I could have sworn I saved this template, so it took me a little bit to find it, but here it is. This is the template which I used to make that hole in the back of that channel iron. So, pays off sometimes to be a pack rat. When I built these ramps, must have been 2 years ago now, I had to put these holes in the back of this nice big piece of channel iron, And the reason I had to do that was because the ramps used to have a piece of basically 3/8 metal, like, you know, 4-inch flat stock at an angle, and they had ramps that used to sit on that piece of, that basically a shelf for the ramps, and that was awful. The ramps were heavy and awkward, so I built these ramps, and they can slide in and out about, you know, 10 inches, and those work super, super awesome. But I'm going to drill a hole to start with so that it'll be easier for the torch to cut that out. I also added these strobe lights, and they're powered by the tail lights. So I've got a switch right here, as you can see. There are 2 positions, so that's 4-way strobe, and that's 2-way strobe. So basically I reach that from the underside. If I want my strobe lights on, I can more or less just turn the headlights on, and the strobe lights will come on. So that was the only way I could really figure out how to get power back here. Seems to work all right. That's 1/4-inch material, pretty beefy. I always wear a glove. Whenever I was a kid, this drill belongs to my dad. When I was a kid, I twisted my arm real bad. And I was always scared of this drill, but as you grow older, you kind of realize what you did that was wrong, and you kind of correct those issues, so gotta keep a hold of that. That's a 1/2-inch drill. That thing's probably older than I am by 30 years. Good drill, though. I've got a big chunk of 3/8 plate held in the back there so I don't melt my wires whenever I cut through that with a torch. Definitely not the best circle in the world, but I'll clean it up now with the grinder. Should be very serviceable. My wires in the back are all nice and protected because of that plate. Well, I got the light in there. Looks like that's a really nice fit. I have to try to get some yellow paint just to kind of freshen that up a little bit. There we go, we're well on our way. All right, got them both done. Well, the hole anyway. Now I've just got to wire these bad boys up, get some paint on there, and try them out. All right, so the way these LEDs work are pretty sweet. So basically, this is the little wiring diagram of what these 3 wires are. So the white is always ground on these LEDs. Now, the red wire is actually your brake light or the brightest filament. So that would also be blinkers in this case. The black wire in this case is the tail light or the running light, which is the lighter of the filaments, if this were a filament bulb. Basically, black wire is tail light, red wire is brake light or blinker, white is ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to hook up the red wire to the brake light wire that we just found under the trailer, and then I'm going to also hook up the tail lights to the existing tail lights. So these will serve as tail lights and brake lights. Tail lights and brake lights, tail lights and blinkers. So we'll get at that and I'll show you what happens. Alright guys, so when it comes to making a really nice connection on a trailer or something that you're not, you know, It's not like an electronics where you're gonna have to solder it. So what I always end up doing is I use these Crimp Ferrules. Now, you know, these come bare without the little plastic garbage jets on there. And I always get some of this dual wall silicone lined shrink tubing. And that is the best thing that you can use to do a connection like that. And whenever you actually heat that up, silicone is going to ooze out of there. Let me show you. This is probably the closest thing to soldering that you could do, and it's the easiest thing, because typically whenever you're underneath hard to reach areas on trailers or trucks or whatever it is, last thing you're going to want to do is get out your soldering iron and make a connection. So that right there is a very good connection and super easy. Now obviously I'm using different color wires. If this was a customer vehicle, I'd probably go out of my way to try to keep the color the same through, but I'm using up a lot of the old wiring that I have laying around, and it's just my own trailer, so I can pretty much figure out the wiring, you know, wherever it's got to go. Now if you look at this little ferrule really close, you'll notice that there is a cut in the middle of it that divides the two pieces. So if you got yourself a pair of crimpers like this, what you're going to want to do is put the center of that tongue that sticks down, you can see that, right up to the center of that ferrule. And whenever you crimp it, that's going to give yourself the best connection that you can get between, you know, a connector like this. All right, so it's the next day. Had a little bit of rain last night. Anyway, last night I painted the openings. And the only thing I had was John Deere yellow. So that's what I ended up using. Just so you don't get rust around the edges and then it'll bleed. Rust will bleed down. Kind of like this. So anyway, got that cleaned up. I'm gonna get the new lights in. These new gaskets are always just a little hard to get in. They don't really want to go the way you want them to. These lights are pretty difficult to get in, even with a little trick. Use WD-40. Even with a hole that's big enough for the light, or too big for the light, these things can go in tricky. Especially when the gasket's brand new, they just don't like to flex. Summer though, are those things sitting out in the sun? Those will be just fine. So there, that's all popped in. It's a finished product. Just gotta plug it in. Here's another tip. Always use some electrical, basically electrical contact grease. Because these things, behind the wheels, they really take a beating. You know, they get all the salt and they get gravel and pretty much everything you can think of gets thrown up from the wheels. And this trailer anyway contacts the lights. So always make sure to put a nice little bit of contact grease on the terminals. So I use my strobe lights whenever I'm hauling something wide, and that works pretty good having the strobe lights run off the tail light signal. That works pretty good. And what I can do, I can just leave this switch on, turn the headlights on, and I can control the strobe lights from in there. That's a pretty good feature. So guys, what I ended up doing to get power for the other lights I just added, I ended up piggybacking the ground and tail light signal from the original light. Now, because these are LEDs, they really draw less amperage If these were conventional lights, I may have done something different, but that seemed to work the easiest to get tail light power for the new lights. So I like it. Those look really good. One thing that I've always thought is weird is that these LEDs get super bright the further away you get from them. And as you get closer, it's almost like they get dim. Not dim, but I guess it's just all in the angle. Well, I think those look really nice, and that's a pretty good upgrade to this trailer. I can still run this trailer with the old school truck if I ever get another one that runs just the outside lights. But now I can run this trailer with a new tractor as well, so DOT will be very happy that I'll have all my lights in operation. So I'd call that a success, and it looks pretty darn nice. And those LEDs really do draw less amperage compared to conventional filament bulbs. So with the older wiring and everything on trailers, it's always nice to go with LEDs if you can.